Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. I just wanted to give a few minutes for people to join in today. So just like to welcome everybody to the HPMA Future Focus webinar on equality, diversity and inclusion. My name is Rachael. I am the Deputy Director of Organisational Development and Inclusion at the Isle of Wight NHS Trust, and I'm delighted to be chairing today's important webinar on how we promote equality, celebrate diversity and enhance inclusion in everything that we do. So we have a number of excellent speakers for you today who will be sharing their insights on a number and range of topics today. I'd just like to firstly thank not only HPMA but our event partner Bright Horizons. Bright Horizons is dedicated to providing the best in class for work and family solutions alongside the provision of great childcare solutions. They are dedicated to supporting employers to enable the holistic combination of work and family, ensuring their working parents and carers are amongst the most engaged and productive members of any team. The business now globally encompasses approximately 1,100 nurseries, over 10,000 emergency childcare and backup care providers, and works with more than 1,150 of the world's leading employers, providing a full range of work and family support. The bespoke services that they provide address the practical well-being and cultural needs of organisations and individuals. With operations in the US, UK, India and the Netherlands, Bright Horizons specialise in supporting multinational clients, have a strong commitment to corporate sustainability, which they approach through their Bright Horizons Foundation for Children. They act as a trusted partner, provider and advisor on strategies for combining work and family. This plays a key part in attracting, engaging and retaining clients' talented employees. So excellent work being undertaken by our Bright Horizons and an important consideration in the times that we live in now and into the future. So just in terms of some housekeeping, if I could very, very kindly remind people to switch off their cameras and audio at all times. And if you do have, and we encourage you to submit your questions via the chat function. The webinar will be recorded and will be made available, and I'll be introducing our speakers as they join the stage. Social media is extremely important to share our insights and conversation. So please do join in the Twitter conversation and tagging HPMA at HPMA_national. And I will also be keeping a close eye on the chat function and making a note of any questions that you may have. And I will be addressing that to the panel members. And without further ado, I'll just wait to see if Professor Anton Emmanuel has joined the stage. I'll just leave that for a few seconds, as I know Professor Emmanuel was having some difficulties joining this morning on the Zoom link. But if not, I will proceed and introduce another one of our speakers as well. So just wait and to see if Professor Emmanuel has joined. Okay, so I think there's still just slight issues with the joining of the team. So okay, so I'll just firstly introduce one of our new members, which I'm going to change the agenda, so apologies everybody. I'd like to introduce a really important webinar delivered by Cheryl and Rachael. I'll introduce them in a few moments. Delivering a diverse and inclusive HR and OD community in the NHS. We have Cheryl Samuels, Deputy Director of Workforce Transformation at NHS England, and Rachael Tyler, Development Director at HPMA London Academy. Cheryl is the Deputy Director of Workforce Transformation, overseeing key priorities for delivery of the transformation roadmap for London, as we seek to attract, recruit and retain a diverse workforce. With over 20 years professional experience and 10 years at senior management level, Cheryl has played a leading role in addressing key workforce challenges continuous improvement in core HR services, and leading large-scale transformation and organizational development programs to embed culture change and inclusivity. She is currently spearheading a high-profile social movement with HPMA for change amongst HR and OD professions under the banner #InclusiveHR. I definitely request you engage with that. It's fantastic learning, a brilliant program there. The movement is gaining momentum right across regions, with action being taken to facilitate a more inclusive HR profession that is able to be led with credibility. Prior to taking her role, she was also the National Health and Wellbeing Lead at NHS with key requirements around improving health and wellbeing of our people. A number of this work was recognised as part of the overall health and wellbeing programme by the Personal Today Awards and Occupational Health. In 2014, she successfully established the Deputy Directors of HR Network, which she continues to chair, which has 80+ active members, which represents 40% of London NHS trusts. And Cheryl is also a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Personal Development and is regularly invited as a thought leader to speak at national CIPD conferences. Fantastic experience. And can I just also add, Cheryl is absolutely a fantastic person, compassionate and inclusive in everything that she does. So very, very proud to be a friend and colleague to Cheryl. And we also have the fabulous Rachael Tyler, who's been the role of Development Director for Healthcare People Management Association, HPMA, for the London Academy for the last 5 years. In her time as Development Director, Rachael has worked very closely with the Academy team and member organisations to develop exciting, holistic development programs for workforce professionals. And under her leadership, the Academy has grown from strength to strength and has 65 members across London and South East. Rachael is very passionate about improving talent management processes for the HR and OD profession, identifying, developing talented future people and workforce leaders, established a number of aspirant leadership programs, one which was shortlisted for a CIPD award and for a national HPMA award. And prior to her current role, Rachael has worked in HR, extensive experience working in generalist and specialist roles, and has 13 years experience as a HR director in mental health, community and primary care trust organisations. Again, delighted and proud to work alongside Rachael as well, and I know she integrates equality, diversity, inclusion throughout her work, and is a fantastic champion in everything she does for diversity and inclusion. So fantastic set of speakers that we have for you today to start kick off this morning. So I will hand over to Cheryl and Rachael.
Thanks ever so much there, Ricky. I'm going to just share some slides with everybody. Oops. Let's just go back to share. Hopefully everyone can see that. I'll just put it on the, let's make it a bit bigger. Okay, so welcome everybody to the Future Focus Conference. Rachael and I are going to be talking about delivering a diverse and inclusive HR and OD community in the NHS. I thought I'd probably just start off by just really outlining what the motivation has been for actually spearheading the campaign and social movement to actually really create a more inclusive HR. This is all centred around the mentoring experiences of some of our staff within the HR and OD space, and the impact that some of the lived experiences that they've had and how that's really impacted on them as individuals in terms of their own development and their own aspirations and their own hope and their own wishes and thoughts in terms of where they want to go. And so the sad thing is that we have some people who don't really have positive experiences, and those positive experiences impact on their mental health, but furthermore, it actually really stifles their hope. And we've got an opportunity to really provide a level of hope through putting some real interventions that are going to make a difference. However, it requires everyone to be behind us. And so we have made public pledges to pledge our commitment to the HR profession. And I've pledged to be unapologetically authentic in being true to myself by amplifying the voices of Black, Asian and minority ethnic workforce and OD professionals so that they can be heard and represented. And most importantly, that they can realise their potential and their value to the NHS. So I'll let Rachel share her motivation.
Thanks, Cheryl, and hello everyone. I think it's important for Cheryl and I to talk about our motivation, why we've got involved in this work, and as Ricky says, why we're so passionate about it. I just wanted to share with you my journey. I would say that what this process has done is made me re-educate myself. It's made me stop and pause and ask different questions. And I've learned some really important lessons. I've learned about institutional racism. I've learned about what it is to be discriminated against. I've learned about the layering effect of that discrimination and how microaggressions, experiences that our colleagues, our ethnic minority colleagues have along the way. If you're not listened to in a meeting, if you're passed over for a promotion, how that layering effect starts to impact on your sense of hope. It starts to impact on your well-being, and it can make you feel marginalised. And I've really tried to stand in our colleagues' shoes through the work that we've done in order to understand that more fully. I've also had pause to reflect on my own experiences, and I recognise that as a white middle-class woman, when I reflect on my career to date, it's been a fairly straightforward path to being an HR director. I've been very fortunate. I've had great role models, but I also understand that it's not as easy for a number of our colleagues, and that there are a lot of barriers that people face that I've actually not faced myself. I've also learned about what it is to be an ally. I've learned a lot from Cheryl. We've led this work shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand almost at times, because we are so passionate about it. And what Cheryl has taught me is that you can't call yourself an ally. You have to demonstrate that you're an ally through your actions, through your motivations, through speaking up. So I've learned a lot about how to become hopefully an effective ally in taking this work forward. So yeah, an accumulation of lots of learning has really been my motivation. So next slide, please, Cheryl. So my pledge, and I recognise that through my role as Development Director for the HPMA London Academy, I'm actually in quite a powerful position to impact on the development and career pathways of all our HR and OD colleagues across. We have almost, well, more than 60 member organisations, so we're wider than London. We're also the southeast of the country. So I believe that I can use my role to work with passion, determination and influence to ensure that the London Academy plays a pivotal role in leading a positive step change in the experience of our ethnic minority HR and OD professionals. And in doing that, it means that I will challenge, I will question, I'll call out complacency in action and be bold in achieving our vision for creating a fair and inclusive environments within which ethnic minority HR and OD colleagues will hopefully thrive, develop and progress. So that really sums up the work that I'm leading. So where this all started, we're going back over a year now. We recognise that one of the important things is that we need to create safe spaces for our Black, Asian and minority ethnic HR and OD staff to come together to talk about their experiences, to feel safe to do that in a confidential environment. So we commissioned some external consultancy to undertake research on our behalf. What we found, actually, interestingly, is that there is very little research into this for our profession. And I think it's really important to make the point that this work is concentrated on the HR and OD profession. And I think as professionals, we're used to supporting others in our organisations, thinking about others' development, others' experience, and we're not very good about thinking about that for ourselves and for our profession. So that's why it was really important for us to commission this research, to hear directly from our colleagues around their experiences, so that could inform the actions that we have gone on to put in place. So just some headlines from that research, and we conducted 5 focus groups, and we also had survey monkeys, and we actually got really great, rich feedback from our colleagues. And just the headlines from our findings were around colleagues sensing that career journeys weren't available, often open to them. Lots of feedback that our ethnic minority colleagues were very ambitious, but that they couldn't see the opportunities available to them. They didn't see senior ethnic minority leaders in their organisations, and therefore didn't see their pathway to achieving the next step in the career ladder. Lots of feedback around unconscious bias, particularly around recruitment, secondment, promotion, opportunities, development opportunities, and I talked about the barriers to progression. And the overall impact of that, and I also talked about the layering effect, is it impacts on job satisfaction, it impacts on their experience, and then impacts also on health and well-being. We had some really concerning feedback that spurred us on, Cheryl, if we could go to the next slide, to actually take a step back and think, well, what does that mean? What does that mean for this programme of work that we're going to lead? What are the key actions we need to take? And we described this as a quiet revolution. This is work that needs to take place over a long period of time. It's not enough for us. I mean, we've got the 4 key recommendations, the 4 overarching actions that we've agreed upon, but they will only create a step change in the experience of our colleagues if it's actually embedded across all our organisations. And we'll go on to talk about how we're doing that. But in terms of those key recommendations, it is about implementing a robust career framework. It's about delivering focused development for ethnic minority HR and OD professionals. It's about developing fairer employment practices, and about providing stronger networks and opportunities for professionals to raise concerns and come together and find resolution. So as I say, those are the and all that information, the findings from our research, is available at that link. But Cheryl's going to go on and talk about what's happened since then and the work that we've taken forward.
Thank you, Rachel. So having heard all of that, I think what's really important is that we kind of really started to set out what we thought the roadmap was in order for us to be able to progress this work. And the first step for us was to establish the baseline data so that we understood exactly how many HR professionals we actually have in the system, how diverse is our profession. And the other bit was also just trying to understand where the glass ceiling was occurring in order for us to be able to think about how best to actually shatter that glass ceiling as we progress through this work. And we've taken a very conscious and very deliberate and intentional decision to actually ensure that we keep this high on the agenda. So we have really led a high profile campaign, both nationally and regionally, around actual the experience of HR and OD staff, so that there is an understanding that actually some of these inequalities that we see in society, they're all replicated in our own organisations, and therefore this is part of the impetus for doing it, because we are not unique in that respect. And then we've actually then looked at creating an advocate and allies group, because we felt we needed to have some sort of safe space for our leaders to be able to come together, share experiences, but also to learn in a safe environment. And actually part of the issues that are aligned with this are around people not necessarily feeling comfortable or feeling fearful of saying the wrong thing. And actually what we wanted is to have a safe space to be able to explore some of those issues. But also to do some of the learning. And the other area was to look at the career hubs and thinking about how we develop a career framework and support really good career conversations so that we can start to close the inequality gap. There are experiences that some of our white counterparts experience that actually some of our Black, Asian and minority ethnic staff don't experience. And actually just being aware of what all the different resources are, what the hints and tips are that they could actually be taken advantage of that might just make the difference, knowing what courses and things are out there, even just starting to think through what your gaps are in your work history and your work experience, and thinking how you can close the gap. But actually, if you don't have the right kind of conversations and you're not asking the right kind of questions, it's difficult to start to do that self-assessment. So we've kind of looked at putting a framework in place for that too. And lastly, the other bit was actually being focused around culture change. And so we've recognised that there is a need to actually look at the culture within our HR profession and start to look at how we do something that's radically different to what we've done previously. And that's where the anti-racism leadership development programme comes in, that Rachel referenced earlier, in that we want to start a quiet revolution where we actually have some positive disruptors that are actually in the system that start to challenge some of the systematic and institutional barriers that exist, which are not seen by all, but are definitely felt by a number of individuals who are impacted across the system. So in terms of just knowing what the national picture is so that people get a sense of that. So we've got just over 15,000 HR and OD staff in the NHS across the country, and 79% of them are female, 16% of them are of BME background. So we know from a gender point of view that we don't have as many men in the service, but we are a very female dominated sector. And also the number of people from BME background is only 16%, but that doesn't tell the whole story. But when you look at it in London itself, we've got just under 2,500 HR and OD staff, and again it's female dominated, but we have greater diversity. So 45% of the London HR and OD workforce is of ethnic minority background. So what this may well, to some people, think this is really great, but then when you break it down and start to look at it by band, it's very clear to see across the country, you can see that the diversity diminishes the further you go outside of London. But even when you look at it in London, actually most of those BME people are actually at band 7, and the glass ceiling seems to appear at around about band 7 upwards. So to actually see people like myself that are senior members of staff, we are few and far between. Very, you know, it's not very often that I walk into a room and actually attend meetings and find people that look like me, given my seniority. So I think that there is something for us clearly to do to make sure that we have greater representation and greater diversity of thought and decision making at the senior end of the scale. So this is what we call a levelling up diagram, and what this really shows us is that in order for us to actually really balance out the existing situation and to have greater representation, what we actually need to do is to level up and redistribute the people from band 6. We need to kind of start looking at all those bands below in the red and actually redistributing them so that we have greater representation in the upper levels. So this shows us that the scale and size of the challenge is we've got 45%. We need to level up by 45%. So it is no mean feat. And actually, as Rachel said, we're in this for the long haul. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And it's going to take time in order for that to happen, but we have to start taking the steps forward in this space now. So in terms of some of the actions that we have taken so far, we've kind of focused on 4 key areas. We've obviously been really public. We've led a real public awareness campaign. So some of that started with an article in People Management, alerting people to the issue. And then we started a course of public pledges. So we've got senior leaders, our HR directors, our deputy directors, our assistant directors, our heads of equality and diversity, people within the HR profession that are managing services have started to make public pledges of their commitment to the profession to make it more inclusive and to start to note the challenges ahead and to actually take action. We launched the hashtag inclusive HR hashtag, and we've been actually sharing information on social media around the actions that we've taken, but also promoting those leaders that are actually speaking out in this space, so that people do actually know what their leaders think around the EDI agenda. We've also started to talk to our leaders about their experiences, what has shaped their leadership style, their leadership practice, how their own power and privilege has influenced their leadership practice within HR, and also just noting what they do see and what they don't, and possibly where some of their blind spots are, but getting them to be really open and frank. And so we've been running a monthly story in the newsletter where our leaders are speaking openly and honestly in this space. And we've also attended a number of conferences and spoken about the work. In addition to that, we've also created the HR and OD Resource Hub. We've launched the web page with all the resources on it. So that has the career framework, shares some of the personal career journey stories that people have talked about. It's also got an inclusive Padlet of resources in case people want to, at their own pace, learn about EDI. And you can do that in the form of blogs, videos, articles, journals, etc. There's all sorts of things that are on there that people can learn at their own pace. The other thing that I'm really proud of is that HPMA London have actually reviewed the training content and the course providers that provide education to the HR and OD profession. And we now have 30% more diverse course providers from an ethnic minority, and the content in which we are delivering is more diverse. The impact that this is going to have is massive, because it means that actually we can actually ensure that our HR and OD leaders have culturally sensitive information that goes out to them. And then I'll just say very lastly on this, that the culture change piece, we've actually launched the Anti-Racist Leadership Development Programme that Rachel referenced earlier. Applications have just been extended, so there are a few places left. So if there is anybody who feels moved by all of this and would like to learn more, the closing date is on the 20th of September, so please do get your applications in and look on the HPMA website for further information. We've also got the personal journeys and some case studies that are also on there, which we're promoting as well. So all of that will start to shape the culture going forward. This is just a quick slide that just shows you some of our leaders who have made public pledges, and some of them you may well recognise here. We've got the director from SLAM, we've got the former Chief People Officer from the Royal Free, we've got Liz Nawadi, that was at St George's, has recently become a director, and we've got Rujin in the centre, and we've got Mira from Lewisham and Greenwich, and Tanya from East London Foundation Trust. But there are many more that have made pledges, and if you're wondering if your leader has made a public pledge, do feel free to actually ask them. This is something for people to be proud of, and to actually know what side of the fence their leaders are on in terms of actually trying to move towards an anti-racist organisation. So in terms of the outcomes, we're actually wanting to really create that growth. We want to create that authentic and inclusive culture, but also fairness sits at the heart of all of what we're doing. And we want everyone to be able to have visibility of all the opportunities that exist, and for us to be really open and transparent, but also to use the lived experience of real people to drive the actions that we want to see and feel moving forward. So we will continue in our quest to achieve all of that. The anti-racist leadership programme that we have released is there to create that genuine sense of hope, and also, most importantly, really to deliver that step change in the lived experience of our staff. But also, if we don't start to make those changes, we're not going to attract high quality HR and OD professionals in the future that are of ethnic minority background, so that we can actually have that representative leadership at the top. So I guess ultimately, to maintain the status quo as a leader, knowing all that we've learned over the course of this pandemic and about the real life impact of inequalities and the injustice that exists, it really is a bitter pill to swallow. We have to take action now, and we need to do that collectively, and that is bottom up as well as top down, in order to get the change and for us all to be the change that we want to see as we move forward. So I'll hand over to Rachael.
And I don't think we've got time for questions, but what Cheryl and I just put some questions as a final slide, which ones that you might just want to reflect on through the course of today, and ones you might want to frame your own questions back to us in the panel a bit later on. But I guess our questions to you is, how would you like to see this work reflected in your own team and directorate? As Cheryl says, we've got some organisations that are really actively involved, but there are some that have not yet got engaged. So how do we start to really spread this more widely across our organisations to ensure that we can create the conditions for that step change to happen? What would make you a better ally? I talked a bit about being an ally, but for you to reflect on how you could become an ally in this work. And what do you feel inspired to do as a result of today's session? So that's a thought I would leave you with. And just a thought from me, I was listening to a podcast recently, and someone said, I wrote it down, what you can't see, you can't be. And I think that's a really important message in this work, and trying to establish that hope, trying to establish the opportunities and the aspirations, so that people, particularly our ethnic minority colleagues, can believe that they can achieve the senior roles in their organisations. So thank you very much. I will hand back to Ricky for the next stage of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl and Rachael, for a fantastic presentation, and I really like the evidence-based approach and the program that you've got in. This is not just about positive action. This is about a movement and a culture change around shifting the dynamics of equality, diversity, and inclusion. We do have questions, and but I'm just going to bring in Professor Anton Emmanuel, as he's just joined us today. So great to see you again. I'll just do a quick intro, but I will come back to questions you have posed for Cheryl and Rachael after Professor Emmanuel.